I try to always pray and make sure that like, God, is this really what you have for me? Like, is this really the thing that I'm doing?
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Pushing the Pen. I'm super excited for today's topic. We're talking that faith talk, and I have Easy, co-founder of More Faith, and a speaker. We're going to be giving you guys the lowdown on how you can use faith to tackle your dreams. So, how are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm feeling good. It's a great day, and I'm just ready to chat.
Yes, okay, me too. So, tell me a little bit about how More Faith came together.
Yeah, so More Faith started one at the height of the pandemic. So this is how it all started. Sid and I, well, my brother Sid, who's my co-founder, with me doing More Faith, we started in the height of the pandemic, and really it started because we were doing a Bible study with our friends, and one day our friend, a few people was like, "Yo, you should kind of extend this, to everybody." So I took heed to that. I was like, okay, that sounds cool, I
Right.
guess. And then Seg got the same confirmation. So for me, like once I hear something 2 or 3 times, I know that God is probably speaking to me,
Yeah.
about that. So then from there, Seg had a platform called More Ambition. I had a platform called Game of Faith. So like it just was simple. Like I was like, bro, we're gonna call it More Faith. Because right now, people need something to hold
Hold
on
on
to,
to.
because everything was just uncertainty, chaos, turmoil. And then we started it, I want to say, I think it was like April 6th, 2020, or the first week of April, something like that.
Yeah.
And, then from there, it just took on a life of its own. And, the format was simple. We would share for like the first 15 to 20 minutes. And then from there, we'd give people a chance to have, comments, statements, questions. And then from there, it just kind of took on a life of its own.
Yeah. Um, what would you say, how would you describe More Faith? Because you said that you had your thing, he had his. So would you just describe it as like a Bible study, or like what's your take on what you guys are doing?
So it started out as a Bible study, and to some degree, it still is a Bible study. But I would describe it as a community, a place where young adults can come, and we provide a voice to the voiceless. So
Yeah.
like one of the things about More Faith that we wanted to kind of separate ourselves from just different platforms is like giving a voice to the people, because I feel like a lot of times, especially in the church, sometimes
Yeah.
young adults don't feel heard, and we wanted more than anything young adults to feel heard and feel like what they said mattered. Just the issues and things that they were going through mattered. So we really wanted to provide a platform that, one, can help people grow together, but two, give people a voice, and then also cultivate the next generation of leaders as well.
Yeah, I love that. So speaking of like giving people a voice and a community to feel heard and seen, you kind of spoke on your like run of show for like the Bible study.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys will give your message, and then you kind of have prompts available to kind of open up the conversation
Yeah.
for other people. And we know that the prompts are just that they start, but then from what everybody shares, it really opens up the conversation, which is such a beautiful thing to see. Um, and I've observed this multiple times. And during one particular conversation, I even shared a personal story about realizing how a seed of doubt was planted in me from as a child. And at that time, I had already started doing the work to break that down, and break down the limiting beliefs that prevented me from taking risks or just stepping out in faith in general. But for anybody who's struggling from detaching from a bad seed that was planted in them, can you share your perspective on how having faith in the Lord can shift which seeds we really focus on harvesting and like pruning?
Yeah. So one, I mean, and that's a great question, and I want to commend you, for doing the work, because a lot of people don't do the work,
Yeah.
and take time to kind of detach from bad seeds.
Yeah.
But to kind of answer that question head on, one of the things that I would say is like one of the ways to like detach from something is to be in an environment that cultivates the other thing. So for example, if I know that I'm trying to heal, I shouldn't be around people who are going to just re-trigger me, re re-aggravate the scars and wounds that I've that I've
like
dealt
twist
with.
the knife.
Yeah. So one thing I would say is like to detach from a bad seed is change your environment. Like get around people who are who are pouring into you, who are speaking life into you, who are really building you up. Helping you become the best version of yourself. But ultimately, you gotta pray. Like people neglect the power of prayer and what prayer can do. And me, I mean, I pray about everything. I pray about getting the parking spot, outside, but like,
open up a spot.
but you gotta work your faith, And I tell people that because faith is a muscle. So like you can't be somewhere, and like, because I always tell my dad this. I'm like, why do we go to church and hear these sermons and hear about all these grand stories in the Bible, but then on Monday, when life hits, we act like we didn't hear all these grand stories of faith. So, I would say you got to change your environment and you got to pray and you got to work your faith, So like, if you believe, listen, I'm healed, that seed of doubt is gone. You got to start speaking life over yourself.
Yeah.
So those are a few things that I recommend, but like speaking life over yourself is probably like one of the top things I can recommend anybody from detaching.
One of the things that I say often just amongst my friend group is it's so imperative to surround yourself with people who see it for you when you can't see it for yourself. Because I think naturally too, there are moments or seasons when we can be a bit defeated, when we are just having a hard time seeing it because of consistent obstacles or mental health, issues are very prevalent at that time. And so let's just kind of speak on how we can intentionally like select sound counsel.
Yeah. So, man, wise counsel is so important, and the Bible speaks about that. The Bible is very clear about, seeking wise counsel. But I would say, like, I think that most people, and I should say this, with a grain of salt, most people, you know who you should talk to about what.
Yeah.
And who you can't talk to about certain things. So, for example, like, for any of the viewers out there listening, like, if you know somebody who's always down the wrong path, who is always doing the thing that you shouldn't be doing, you should not be, seeking them for counsel.
Yeah.
So, one thing I would say is just like the counsel that you need is probably right in front of you, but you're probably running away from it. 'Cause a lot of times we run away from people who's going to give us the honest, straight, no chaser truth. You know what I'm saying? And so like a lot of times I would say like just look in your circle.
Yeah.
It's that friend that you don't want to talk to about things because you feel like they're probably judging you. Most times our friends not judging us, but they're correcting us.
Yeah, and it's like
in this
we
generation,
gotta unpack that.
Yeah, and we don't like being corrected or like being told you were wrong.
Yeah.
Or like being held accountable. So that's what I would say toward that.
And I think to that point too, sometimes the potential friend isn't what we think they should look like.
Yep.
And we don't want to really get into that one.
Yep.
Like,
no, we don't.
Because people, everybody's open, kind, like open to befriending anyone, but it's like, we're not.
Yep.
We're not. If they don't fit, whether it's our lifestyle, our aesthetic, or...
Aesthetic is big.
Especially in the DMV.
Yeah. The aesthetic is big.
And that, I think, stifles people a lot. And I think, too, sometimes they'll still tap on those individuals for advice every now and then. But then what ends up happening is that they're missing out on the fruits of the whole friendship because they want to pick and choose how this person can interact in their life. And, you can unintentionally build resentment and cause more harm than good. And I read this book called Friendish, and it was like basically the counterintuitive approach to friendships. It was like culture versus faith, and talking about that approach. And it humbled me quickly. And I thought, I was a good person. I thought I was kind. I thought I was like befriending everyone, and I wasn't. And it really shifted my approach to my close friendships as well as with strangers and the day-to-day individuals that I interact with. And since then, I could say how I approach people is I truly actively and am more mindful of each conversation and making sure that whether it's a one-off conversation that I give that person the space to be heard and seen, because that just goes a long way. And then when we talk about opportunities and when we talk about, you know, being able to get your foot in the door, it only takes one conversation and one interaction. And not every interaction with somebody is seemingly going to be beneficial in the immediate, but we can't discount them. So that's the key right there.
That's planting the seed.
Yeah.
That's planting the seed.
Pretty much. So let's talk about some of your like recent events.
Okay.
You recently did a panel for Journey to the Hills Live. How was that?
It was great. It was great. Shout out to Keon and Destiny, Journey to the Hills. Wonderful platform if you're trying to learn about singleness, marriage, relationships. It was a phenomenal night. We talked about all things singleness, relationships, red flags, green flags, the whole nine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you being on the panel, what perspective were you there to provide?
A perspective of truth, authenticity, and someone, you know, from a single man's perspective.
Okay. So what would you say are some of your green flags?
Green flags, somebody that pours into me, somebody who is supportive of the things that I'm doing, somebody who is empathetic and compassionate, somebody who knows where they're headed, knows their own destiny, and hears God for themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I always say two things just stuck out from what you said. One, I always say, like, me personally, I don't think I can introduce Christ to someone and actively date them, because that's a relationship that you have to build that solid foundation for.
And especially as a woman, if you're trying to be led.
We can get into that. Absolutely. And that's essentially my take right there.
Yeah, I get you.
The second thing was, you say compassionate and empathetic. And I think those are key characteristics as well. And I think being open and transparent, I have not been eager to date in the past because I've been career focused. And I think sometimes in my mind, I've convinced myself, like, you know, people may not be open to being on that journey with me, because I do feel like I'm 28 now, and I do feel like people, you know, coming up in the last like 5 years were kind of focusing on partying, going out. And sometimes when you decline things too many times, it's like they get to looking at you and like, you're boring, you're this. And so I kind of took a step back and was like, well, okay, I'm just going to go all in. But I think having a partner who is really understanding of the work that you're trying to do, the impact and the strides that you're trying to make in your career is really important. So what advice would you give someone who's kind of in a similar space where they're pursuing their career, their goals, their passions, and whether they're already in a relationship or they're kind of starting to date or dating now, and balancing career, professional dreams, and like wanting to be attentive to their partner?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. But no, first I want to kind of backtrack a little bit. If somebody thinks that what you're doing is boring, then like they're definitely not for you.
Right.
Because you're not boring, you're fruitful. So like, you know, you got to think about it. Like if you're pursuing the things that God has for you, then like all you're doing is trying to produce fruit in your life, you know, for later, you know, down the road. So I wanted to kind of address that first. Yeah. But for anybody, what was the last part of the question?
I don't know. Hold on.
No, like that was a really loaded, good question.
No, it really was.
No. Matter of fact, it was about balance.
Yeah.
And about, you know, how do you balance, you know, your career, but also your partner, or if you're single. Yeah. So I'll start with single because I don't have a partner. So you know, I'm a woman. I'm not a partner. Anyway, but you know, I'm single. So I'll say this. One thing that I had to do was really seek God on clarity on the season that I'm in. So, you know, at the top of the year, I asked God, I'm like, hey, if I'm not supposed to date in this season, just let me know. You know, I make it clear. But I asked for something like in particular, and I was like, God, if you don't want me to date, begin to open up opportunities for me to operate in my purpose, like more and more. And literally, as I prayed that prayer, like I just started getting so many different opportunities, like to the point now where my time is so occupied that I don't even have the time to do it in this season. So one, I would say identify the season you're in. So like know where you're at. Two, once you know where you're at and know what you're supposed to be doing, then you know what to prioritize. You know, so like, and that goes for somebody single and in a relationship. So if you know that right now pushing the pen, or more faith is your, priority, that that like that one, you should be focused on that. But if you have been graced to have somebody in the season with you, I believe that if they're the person for you, then like God will give them the grace to understand that, hey, I am somebody who has a purpose, a mission, and a mantle and assignment on my life. And, I do want to be with you and cultivate this relationship, but also God has called me to cultivate these things as well. So I believe that the right person will be able to understand.
Right.
Because I also believe that the right person will be chasing something themselves. They'll be doing, and pursuing things of themselves. So I think it's all just, once again, going back to that prayer and really making sure that you are where you're supposed to be at. Because a lot of us, we're in seasons, but we're not in the season the way we should be. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people like they're just floating. They're just floating.
Yeah.
They're not really doing what they should be doing in that particular season. So
I actually feel called out. That's crazy. Yeah. No, that was such a good response. One thing I wanted to say was I think that's really good for the men and women who may get weary during their single waiting period. I know I see a lot of content or see a lot of conversations just surrounding people who are waiting with expectancy and are eager to, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think what you spoke to in that first half was really, really good on how they can shift that perspective during that time. So let's talk about how our posture in the waiting season really impacts, one, how long the season is, and two, what we're spending our time on in that season.
Yeah, that's really good. So one thing that because I've been in a few different waiting seasons, waiting to get my home, or or waiting for a new career, and one thing that, and it's funny because last week I made an Easy Talks on this about being patient in the process, but what I realized is that the process always produces perseverance, because when you're going through any level of process where you're waiting on something, you got to be patient in that season. It requires you to persevere and navigate a lot of challenges to get to that next dimension. Because a lot of times, I pray this prayer and I ask God for my life to to just take off in ways that I can never imagine.
Yeah.
And then I started seeing a lot of kind of chaos happen. And one thing that he kind of reminded me of is that, hey, when you get in a plane and you're about to take off, one, you got to buckle your seatbelt. Two, a lot of times before you get off, the ground, there's turbulence. Shaky. Yeah, and it's a little rocky before you get off into air.
Yeah.
So I realized that when you're waiting on something and you ask God to take you to the next level, you're actually asking God for chaos. You're asking Him for things to start going upside down, for friendships to start falling out. You're asking Him for jobs to start being shut down. You literally. When you actually take off,
it sounds like my February.
Yeah, for real. When you actually take off, you're asking for chaos and turmoil. So one thing that I realized is that patience, you gotta have that.
Yeah.
And if you don't, it'll be cultivated. It'll be cultivated in ways you don't want to see.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And I often say that the journey is where we're being molded, we're formed. It's where the qualities and attributes that we were missing are getting added onto us. And I'm sure you heard that song, Refiner.
Yeah, Refiner.
Maverick City. I can't sing, so I'm not going to sing it.
Nah, yeah, I don't think I heard that.
Okay.
But I'm listening
Listen to it if you want chaos.
Okay.
If you want. But I was listening to it this morning, actually, and they quote or they pull from Romans 12, 1 through 2, where they're in those scriptures is talking about, presenting yourself as a living sacrifice, be holy. That way you can be able to discern what is the good and pleasing will of God. And I think in the process and in the journey, at least for me, it's very imperative that I'm doing God's will and not my own.
Yeah.
And separating my personal desires from what God really has for me, and saying and asking and taking a moment and taking my time during prayer and saying God, place those desires on my heart. And that way, when I'm stepping out and when He's being the lamp upon my feet, I'm doing His work and not just my own.
Yep.
And I think to your point in terms of really like cultivating a thriving prayer life, what are your tips for that? So let's talk about for people who don't pray at all or maybe have a more inconsistent prayer life. Like how can they take a step to show up more or be more consistent?
Yeah, like, no, that's a great question. So people who don't have a prayer life, I would just say start by viewing prayer as a conversation between you and God. So like, however you talk to your friends, like, just tell God, like, hey, God, I don't know the formality of this, but I am trying to grow closer with you.
Yeah.
You know, help me, guide me to show me how I can do that. And then what I will also challenge people to do who don't pray is journal. Like start by journaling what you want to pray.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised at the power of like if you start journaling those things, you start seeing those things come to life.
Yeah.
And I believe that will encourage you, help your spirit want to pray even more.
Yeah.
But for people who have like an inconsistent prayer life, I would say like you got to prioritize it in a way where you do it when you wake up, you do it, you're going through a tough time throughout your day. And then I would even say like end your day in prayer.
Yeah.
So like if you have to schedule it, from a certain degree, like schedule time like you do everything else. Like how you go to the gym, like put it in your schedule. Okay, you know what? From 6 a.m. to 6:30, that's my prayer time. That's my time to spend with God.
Yeah.
Do devotion and things like that. But you got to make God a priority.
Yeah.
You got to, because like right now we live in a life where culture is telling us to hustle, work, keep working, keep going, and we don't make time for anything else but ourselves and our selfish desires, and that's not of God.
Yeah.
And He's not pleased when we do that. So we have to find time, and I would say, just as a best practice to try to use it at the beginning of your day,
Yeah.
and then also, at the end of your day, and then any point of your day where you're like, man, you know what, that hurt, like that, that mean I had my manager, it rocked me, I need to go pray, you just find like a corner or something and just go pray. But you got to make it a priority, like you make your gym time, like you make your talking to your friends time, like you make eating.
Yeah.
Like prayer should be ingrained in your daily life.
Yeah. And the word talks about enter the gates with thanksgiving. And I think one thing that has also just like shifted my personal prayer life is really giving God the glory at the top.
Yep.
At the top. I think it sets the tone and it acts as a reminder to us in the midst of doing that He is our provider, that He comes through, He's the same, He remains the same. And I think within doing that, even though we're going to cast our burdens onto Him, it allows us to strengthen our faith. Essentially, it's acting as, an opportunity for gratitude. It's like, for me, I'm like, as I'm praying, as I'm doing that, I'm like, I actually don't know why I was tripping, because I'm talking about your attributes right now, and that's not lining up to where I was thinking earlier today.
What I'm living.
Literally. And so I have to, my bad, God. I'm sorry. But thank you for the reminder. So it's really humbling and it's really encouraging to take that time. And I think I started doing it. My job has like a wellness room.
Oh, nice.
And so I started taking some time to like pray when I'm frustrated, or even if it's just going into the restroom and taking a beat. And that midday moment where you could have called anybody up, I still call some people, I'm gonna be honest. But going to others before you're going to Him, because they're going to tell you to go off, or they're going to fuel your frustration. And it's like, He knows what you really need in that moment. And by going to Him first, He will send the right one. He will send the right person. So I think that's really important too. Even just going back to the topic of like friendships or relationship wise, when we go to Him first, He sends the one that we need. And I think that's super important. So I said I couldn't sing, and I can't.
Okay.
But there's been this song that I've had on repeat lately. Okay. So I'm just going to tell you the verse.
Okay, tell me the verse. Okay.
Tell you the verse. So the song is called In Due Season, and it goes like this. In due season, I'm going to pay back everything you gave, and I mean it. All the tears cried and the prayers prayed, yeah, I need it. All the time sowed and the lessons learned, I'm reaping, and here's the reason. And then it goes into the rest of the song. And in the song, it's talking about there's like cameos from the individuals like parents, and then they're kind of just like speaking life into them and saying like, oh, I'm so proud of you. But I know like there's been seasons in my life where if it wasn't for the prayers of other people,
Oof.
I may not be where I am
Yeah.
right now. And so just kind of going back to that community piece and how vital it is to have wise counsel and really be intentional about the environment that we place ourselves in daily, because it shifts and it changes. What are your thoughts on just kind of like having the right people being able to intercede on your behalf?
Yeah.
Because we also live in a society where we have mixed friend groups, right? We have people who may not be believers. We have people who may practice a different faith. And so just, I'm curious to hear like your take and how you kind of approach that.
Yeah. So one, it is powerful to have people who can intercede on your behalf. So like for me, I only let certain people in to like what I'm praying for, what I'm praying on, what I'm praying to get out of. And I say that because sometimes the enemy will send people closest to you to discourage you, distract you, and get you off course. And it doesn't mean if they're just like demonic people, nothing like that. But it just means that sometimes they don't necessarily realize that like their influence or their guidance or counsel is not really beneficial for where you're at. So for me, I'm very particular about who I even share about my struggles with. I maybe I got my therapist I talk to about it. I maybe have like 2 or 3 friends, and then other than that, outside of my dad, that's really it. So like I keep my circle of like people who can really know what I'm going through, what I'm up against. I keep that very small. And then also the people that allow to pray for me, because also too, everybody can't pray for you because everybody can't get one through. You know what I'm saying? And then and everybody's not even in a posture to even know like what you need to, what you need. So for me, I'm only telling a select few people.
And sometimes people don't ask for the right things. It's like, I don't need you praying for me. Like,
yeah, they don't. That's what I'm saying. It's like, it's almost like they don't even have the wisdom to even know what you ask for. So for me, I keep a lot of people at bay. Like, hey, I'm doing well, I'm cool. I'm straight. But like my close circle, like they get the real. They get the, hey, this is what I'm up against. I need prayer, and I know that like they are prayer warriors. And my grandma, grandmas can always pray.
I'm telling you.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, you got to keep one in the tuck.
Right, 100%.
Keep one in the tuck. 100%. Oh my goodness. So speaking of that, so I'm curious to know if you've ever had to kind of leave a friendship behind, just because, and I really hate this term, like it's not serving you.
Yeah. Because it does sound like a bit like self-serving in a way.
And it's because I don't think that friendships are always going to be reciprocated. Like what you give, just because I read this book, I clearly like to read.
That's good.
It is, because I need to read the Bible. But I read this book called Relational Intelligence by Pastor Darius Daniels. He's over at Change Church in Atlanta, in New Jersey. And in the book, he breaks down like the 4 kind of like type like of friendships or roles within a friendship in dynamic. So you have like the acquaintance, the advisor, and then I think there's like a 3rd type that's escaping me right now. And I think sometimes people don't realize that even in seasons, your position within the friendship shifts. Or even if it starts in one area, it may shift into more of a advisor role where you're maybe having to kind of like mentor them through something or within a certain project or aspect of their life. And I think what tends to happen is that people begin to feel shortchanged in their friendships or in their friendships and relationships. And it's like, you're not giving me this anymore. So I'm just going to pull back. Like this isn't working for me because you're not coming out, you're not showing up, you're not answering the phone. And that might be a season where that person is experiencing like warfare, or they might just need to be home and need you to pray for them, or their focus is just, you know, building their family. So they might not want to be outside. And I think sometimes it's discerning and being able to respect where people are and allowing the friendship to scale back or shift as necessary versus just pulling the plug.
Yep.
So that's why I'm like, I really don't like that phrase, because like I feel like it's just a little bit more nuanced than that.
It is, yeah.
But I'm curious to know that. So I'm gonna let you answer that part first.
Yeah. So, and that's a really good question. I think so. Like one thing that I can't recall a friendship that I've had to leave yet, but this is what I can say. There have been friendships that I had to kind of put on the back burner. And what I've often seen is that a lot of times God kind of like opens up a door for it to kind of take a back seat in a sense, like whether like we just have a change of interest, you know, our lives are kind of going a different path. You know, I may be going down this path, you may be going down this path, and there's no love lost. It's just that right now, like we're just not on the same track. You know, your interest may be going, just doing other things that right now I'm just not chasing. You know, I'm on a different kind of path, and for me, a lot of times, just like communication just kind of lessens. You know, it's not as frequent interaction, but most times it's almost like my setting changed. So like what will happen is like a door will open up in my life where whether I'm in a new area, new opportunity, and I'm just forced to be around new people. Like I can't like it's not even like it's almost like it's not even intentional. Like God just makes it that way. So that way, that person and or that group of people and I, we don't even have the time to even really communicate. But it is important to like certain friendships, you do kind of see like how they change over time. And I kind of agree with you. It's like sometimes you realize that like friendships, they aren't, you know, you aren't going to always reciprocate, you know, what you give out. And that right there is like, it can be disheartening at times, but when you realize that ultimately God is in control and that sometimes you were sent there to be a blessing to them.
Yeah.
And like, you know, we look at blessings as like, it's all about me. But a lot of times we're in somebody's lives to be a blessing and be a light and be the only hope of Christ for them. Yeah. So I think like I had to kind of reposition how I look at myself and my friendships.
Yeah. And what I heard too is that you kind of were observant of the times and the shifts that were happening, but then you allowed the space for that shift to take place. I, on the other hand, have not always done that. And so I've been on the opposite end where you know that you need to limit your access or, you know, limit that individual's access to you in that season or at that time. And I didn't. And when you don't, I believe that when you don't take heed to what God is showing you, He will allow life to do it for you.
Yes, He will.
And what ends up happening is you can create confrontation from not being obedient. And it's not worth it. So I'm going to just give y'all that now. It's not. But I also wanted to tap into jealousy and how when you're, you know, even whether you're starting in the middle or like you're just straight on like walking in your dreams, your purpose, your career, how that can like manifest, how that can, you know, really cause conflict within your relationships. And I feel like it's a kind of somewhat of a common struggle that people deal with, especially those in the waiting season. And so I'm wondering on like, how do you combat feelings of jealousy and just stay focused on your own journey? Or if you don't experience jealousy, like that discomfort. Because sometimes I think, because I know like I had a moment a few years ago where somebody got a promotion and I was just bothered by it. But I had to unpack that, and I personally realized that what that situation meant to me or how I perceived it was I'm stagnant. I'm not moving, and that is bothering me. That's what's really bothering me, even though I didn't even want that job that she got. So, yeah.
Yeah, nah. So one, I commend you for being transparent because like it takes a lot of
It's
vulnerability
just
to be that like to be
yeah.
that open and share about that. But in times when like I don't often feel feelings of like jealousy or envy, only because I'm I'm a firm believer that like what God has for me is for me, and it's not just cliche in the sense of like God has shown me so much, so many times in my life that like what's for me is always gonna be for me, and it's always custom made, tailor made for me. So I don't really struggle with that a lot. But what I will say, in times where I may feel like, man, like why didn't I get that? I have to like really pray, like God, you know what, like it made me feel away, and like, and I do feel something here, and it may be like a little bit of envy, a little bit, but like, can you help, like remove that from me? But oftentimes too, the reason why I'm able to stay so focused is because I know that I've seen God redeem my time, and like in so many different ways to the point where I'm convinced that I'm on time, even when I don't feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be. Like I
Absolutely.
know that like I'm right where I'm supposed to be in this current season, in this current moment. And even when I am off track, he's so gracious to like remind me, hey, my son, like come back.
Yeah.
I get back on the straight and narrow. So I haven't dealt with that a whole lot, but when I do, I try to pray against that because that is like a spirit that like you don't want to have. People can sense it on you.
Yeah.
They can, like hate, like for me, like I'm quick to tell somebody, hey, you hating,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
hating. That's hate.
Yeah. I'm really cracking up. Well, I nipped my situation in the bud real quick. I'm not playing that. Because nobody wants to be a hater. Like,
Nah.
I hope y'all not out there wanting to do that.
Yeah, no hate.
And so my next or follow-up question is, in moments of impatience, how do you resist the temptation to settle for less or anything just to move forward instead of hold on to your standards?
I always want God's best. So everything in my life, like I have a desire, and I know it's from Him because I've always only wanted the best in everything that I do. Like so, like even with my home situation, there were other homes that were available that I could have went, but it was something inside of me that said, nah, that's not it.
Right.
That's not it. And then when I found my home, it was something that was custom made and tailor made to things that like I knew that I wanted, but I didn't even verbalize, and God blessed me with it. And just the story of that was just so miraculous. And just other things in my life too, like job stuff. I've always seen God do His best.
Yeah.
And for me, I never want to settle for less because I know that God's best exists. So like in every area of my life, I only want God's best.
Yeah.
Because I know that if I get God's best, then like I'll fully be content.
Yeah.
Because if you settle, most times like once the novelty and the thrill wears off, a level and reality sets in, you won't be content. You haven't wondered out whether that's a relationship,
Yeah.
whether that's a new car, whether that's a new
Yeah.
situation, a new job. Like once the hype of the newness wears off, you'll be like, that looks good.
Yeah.
That looks good. And for me, the hype for a lot of stuff has worn off, and I'm still excited about it.
Yeah.
And that's how I know that like I'm really living in this current season of my life and God's best for what He
Yeah.
has for me. So like for me, I don't even worry about that because I know that I only want God's best. And I tell God that. Like I talk to God like, listen, I only want your best. I don't want nothing less than that.
I love that. Yeah. And between this response and your last response, to me, a reoccurring theme is just kind of understanding, one, the Lord's attributes, who He is, and also just understanding that His ways are higher than our ways. Yep. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. So even the fraction of what we think is the best for ourselves, He truly has something better tenfold.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that's really the key. So I think it just comes back down to, knowing who your Lord and Savior is and knowing how much He loves you, because that is going to be evident in the life that He provides for you. So so now we're heading into our passing the pen segment of the show. So this is just the part where we're getting a viewer question and we're just going to give you the opportunity to give your advice or insight to help them out.
Perfect.
Before I ask the question, I did want to give you guys the definition of faith, going strictly off scripture. So we're pulling from Hebrews 11, verse 1. Now, faith is the reality of what is hoped for, the proof of what is not seen. And so our viewer question is, how do you approach risk? Is there a difference when you take a risk out of fear versus faith?
Approaching risk versus fear out of faith.
How do you approach risk? And then just knowing the difference of when you're making that decision based out of fear versus like, oh, this is faith.
Yeah, that's a great question. So to anyone out there that's trying to figure out, am I moving out of risk? No, am I moving out of fear or faith? One thing that I always do is like, in times of situations like that, I always make sure that I'm seeking wise counsel or people around me who have either gone to where I'm trying to go or been where I'm trying to, go to the next level. But for me, a lot of times, situations like that, I try to always pray and make sure that, like, God, is this really what you have for me? Like, is this really the thing that I'm doing? Because if it's fear, then most times you'll know that, like, sometimes you may not should be doing that thing. But it's faith, you may see like a glimmer of hope or something on the other side, some type of sign that's going to come your way to be like, okay, you know what? Even though I can't see everything, I know that if this wasn't for me, this wouldn't have happened, or this wouldn't have opened up. So for me, I always pray for like different signs and checkpoints along the way to remind me, okay, you know what? This is a sign that I should keep pushing this thing forward. So like, I think it just goes down to prayer and seeking that wise counsel, people that have been where you're trying to go, and people who've also seen people or took people, where you're trying to go next.
I love that. And I do want to add to that. I would say pull from biblical truths. And sometimes you won't get an exact answer or to you what is an exact answer. But when you are basing it off of the truth, it's going to guide you in the direction of where you need to go. And God will always provide that confirmation to you. So that would be like
that's good.
All right. So now we're going to wrap up. So I have a few more questions for you.
Yeah, talk to me.
I'm actually intrigued to know what your music taste is. So my question is, if you were to create a soundtrack of your journey thus far, what 3 songs would you select? What's getting you through?
Oh, it could be any music?
Any music, any genre, no limits.
Like 3 songs that describe my journey?
Yeah, or like you feel like it could be like currently what's getting you through, what's gotten you through, what's on repeat, what's hyping you up.
I'll tell you what I listen to, and then I'll see if I can find 3 songs. 3 songs is hard because I got a broad music taste. So right now I listen to like a lot of Cleo Soul.
Okay.
I listen to Cleo Soul. I'm listening to. Let me look at my phone.
Pull it out.
Because this is really good. I'm listening to Cleo Soul. I love a lot of good R&B. So Tyler, Coco Jones.
I love Coco.
I listen to Larry June a lot. Drake, 21 Savage right now. But songs that I would say would get me through is Deliver Me, Donald Lawrence. It's a gospel song. And then I love hip hop. So a song that definitely like speaks to like the journey, I think, is a Sideline Story by J. Cole.
Okay.
And then what else? 3 songs. That's a strong question.
What you listen to on your way over?
The new I listen to SZA.
Okay.
SZA.
I thought you were going to say the new Ariana Grande. That was going to be unexpected. That was going to be unexpected.
No. I listened to SZA on the way over here, and then Drake did a remix with 4 Bats.
Okay.
This Act 2 Data 8 remix. I listened to that a little bit. But yeah, so yeah, I would say that, and then the Larry June song, what is it? Love of Money.
Love of Money.
Yeah.
Okay. I love that. What I love to listen to, it just gets me, it gets my head in the game, is Nipsey Hussle's Hustle and Motivate.
Yeah.
Love.
You know what? I forgot about Nip. You know what? Victory Lap is my favorite motivational album.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Start to finish. It's
Dedication,
so good.
real big.
Dedication.
Victory Lap itself,
It's so
Million
good.
While You Young, real big. Yeah, I mean, I probably can name the whole album.
The whole thing,
Double Up. Yeah, so yeah, I would definitely, I take all that back.
That's the one.
Yeah, that's the album.
I'm cracking up. I
that's
love
the soundtrack,
that. I love that. So last question, tell me how you're pushing the pen in your career. So this is going to be the unique quality that you bring to what you do.
Yeah, wow. So I would say right now, like me being a speaker, teacher, and somebody who is pursuing ministry. I think one thing that separates me from everybody that I do is that I bring a level of truth, authenticity, and unapologetic honesty, but also backed by biblical truth. Somebody who aims to leave people feeling not only inspired but empowered and transformed to actually take action. Because I believe a lot of times the church, and not really the church, but like a lot of times we inspire people, we don't get them practical tools to actually go out and execute on those things. So for me, I want to inspire you and empower you, but I want to also give you tools to actually act those things out.
I love that.
So those are things I think that separate me.
I love that. So I want to let the people know where they can find you, what you're getting ready to do, what you're currently doing. So tell us where they can find you, and then where they can hear more of your talks, conversations, and everything.
Thank you. Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram at Easy Talks, easy.talks. I'll be launching the show very soon in the next few months, where I'll be talking about all things purpose, singleness, finding your destiny, tapping into where God has for you, how to get to the next level of your life. And my personal Instagram, Reginald E. Ward, I also post content on there, for all things purpose.
Awesome. Thank you guys again. You guys know where you can reach me at brooklyn.simone, and you can keep up with Pushing the Pen at pushing.thepen. Thank you guys for joining us for today's episode.